5 things you believe that are wrong. There are 5 things that almost everyone in this country believes about the police, and every single one of them is wrong. Not sort of wrong, not it's complicated wrong, flatly, legally wrong. And here's the uncomfortable part. Believing them is exactly how ordinary, honest people hand over rights they didn't even know they had, on the pavement in the space of a few seconds without anyone forcing them to. The police are not lying to you when they let you believe these things. They simply don't correct you because it makes their job easier when you assume you have to. So today, I'm going to take the 5 biggest myths one by one and tell you what the law of England and Wales actually says on the calm line that puts you back on solid ground each time. And I'll be honest with you, number 5 is the one that catches even the confident ones. So stay with me to the end, and as we go, count how many of these you believed, because I promise you, it's at least one. I'm Oliver Bennett. For 15 years, I defended people in police stations and courtrooms across England and Wales. And I lost count of how many of them got into trouble, not because they'd done something wrong, but because they believed one of these 5 myths and acted on it. So let me make sure that's never you. And before you tell yourself this doesn't apply to you, that you'll never be stopped, that you've done nothing wrong so it doesn't matter, let me stop you there. Because this is for everyone. Not just people with cameras. That's exactly the thinking that gets honest people caught. You don't have to be a criminal to be stopped, questioned, or searched in this country. It happens to people walking home from work, to people sitting in a parked car, to people who simply matched a vague description or were in the wrong street at the wrong moment. And in that moment, I've done nothing wrong is not a shield. What protects you is knowing precisely where the line is. The people who do best in these situations aren't the ones with nothing to hide. They're the ones who know the rules. So this is for everyone. And I gently say, the person most likely to slip up is the one who's sure they never would. Myth number 1. You must give your name whenever they ask. And it's the big one, that you have to give the police your name and address whenever they ask. Almost everyone believes this. You're stopped on the street, an officer says name and address, and you assume that's an order you're legally bound to obey. It isn't. In England and Wales, there is no general legal duty to identify yourself to a police officer simply because they've asked. This isn't some clever loophole. It's settled law going back decades to a case called Rice and Connelly in 1966, where the court said plainly that a citizen is under no legal obligation to answer police questions or to give their details. You are allowed to stand there on a public street and decline to give your name. And that refusal on its own is not a crime. Now, and this matters because I will always give you the whole truth, not the half that sounds good. There are specific situations where the duty does bite and you need to know them. If you are driving a vehicle, you must give your details. That's the Road Traffic Act. If you're being reported for an offense, or you're stopped under a Section 60 order, or you're being dealt with for antisocial behavior, then refusing your name can itself be an offense. But those are defined specific powers, not the everyday what's your name on the street. So the honest position is this. The police can always ask. Whether you're obliged to answer depends entirely on the power they're using, which gives you the only line you ever need here. Calm, polite, not aggressive. Am I obliged to say this? Under what power? Give you my details, and under what power? Make them tell you the power. If there's a real one, you comply. If there isn't, you've just quietly kept a right most people give away without a thought. Let me make that real because it sounds abstract until you picture it. Imagine you're walking home one evening, minding your own business, and an officer stops you and says there's been some trouble in the area and asks for your name and address. Most people being decent and wanting to help just give it. And now their details are written down, attached to an incident they had nothing to do with, sitting in a system. They weren't obliged to give it. There was no power compelling them, but they assumed there was. I'm not telling you to be difficult or unhelpful. Plenty of times you might choose to give your name, and that's fine. It's your choice. The point is that it's a choice, not an obligation, and you should know which one it is before you speak. Because I chose to help, and I thought I had no choice, are two very different things. And only one of them is you actually in control. Myth 2. No comment makes you look guilty. Number 2, that saying no comment or staying silent makes you look guilty and that it will be held against you. This one is planted deep, mostly by television, and it frightens honest people into talking when they shouldn't. So let me be absolutely clear. You have the right to silence. You cannot be convicted simply because you chose not to answer questions. Silence by itself is not evidence of guilt, and it never has been. Now you've probably heard the police caution, the you do not have to. The caution means, under caution only, say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention when questioned something you later rely on in court. And people hear that and panic, thinking every silence will be used against them. But look carefully at when that applies. That warning, the bit about it harming your defense, bites in a formal interview under caution, usually after arrest at the police station. It is not the standard for a chat on the street or a question at the roadside. And even then, all it means is that if you stay silent about something and then spring it as a surprise defense at trial, a court can take that into account. It does not mean your silence is a confession. So here's the calm truth. You never have to feel a silence. You are allowed to say, I'd rather not answer questions until I've had legal advice. And that is not you looking guilty. That is you doing exactly what any solicitor in the country would tell you to do. The people who get into trouble are almost never the ones who stayed quiet. They are the ones who talked. I have sat in more police station interviews than I can count, and I can tell you the pattern almost never changes. The damage is done in the first few minutes by someone nervous trying to be helpful, filling every silence, explaining, justifying, guessing at what the officer wants to hear, and handing over sentence by sentence the very things that are later read back to them in court. Not one of them was ever helped by talking early. The calm ones, the ones who said, I'll wait for my solicitor, were the ones I could actually defend. Silence isn't rudeness, and it isn't guilt. It's the single most sensible thing a frightened person can do. Nice 3. They can search you whenever they want. Number 3. That the police can stop and search you whenever they feel like it. That if an officer wants to search you, that's just that, and you have to submit to it. No questions asked. Not true. In this country, a stop and search is not a power an officer can use on a whim or a feeling. Under Section 1 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, an officer needs reasonable grounds to suspect that you're carrying something specific. Stolen goods, a weapon, drugs, something prohibited. And reasonable grounds has to be based on real, objective facts. Not the way you're dressed, not the fact that you're standing somewhere they'd rather you weren't, not that you look nervous. There are wider powers like a Section 60, but those have to be specially authorized for a particular area and a particular time because of a risk of serious violence. They are the exception, not the everyday. So when you're stopped and searched, you are entitled to be told, before it happens, the officer's name and station, and crucially, the grounds and the object of the search, what they are looking for, and why they think it's on you. And the single most powerful, most legal thing you can calmly say is, what are your grounds? What are your grounds for the search? You're not resisting. Never resist a search. You sort it out afterwards, not on the street. But by asking that question out loud, you've put the officer on notice that you know a search needs a reason, and that whatever happens next is on the record. And this matters more than people realize, because an unlawful search doesn't just feel wrong, it contains everything that flows from it. If a search had no proper grounds, that's something a good solicitor can challenge later, and it can change the whole shape of a case. But that challenge is far easier to make when you calmly ask for the grounds at the time, so there's a clear record of what the officer said their reason was. The person who submits in silence and the person who politely says, for the record, what are your grounds, they can end up in very different positions weeks later over the exact same search. Myth 4. It's illegal to film the police. That it's illegal to film the police. That if you take out your phone and record an officer, you're breaking the law, and they can order you to stop or make you delete it or take your phone off you. This one is almost the exact opposite of the truth, and it's one of the most important to get right, because your camera is often the best protection you have. In England and Wales, there is no law that makes it an offense to film or photograph police officers doing their job in a public place. None. The police's own guidance. The College of Policing, the Met, says it in black and white. Members of the public have every right to film officers, and the police have no power to stop you filming or to make you delete footage or hand over your phone simply because you're recording them. Think about that. No power to seize your phone just for filming. No power to force a deletion. Now the honest limits. You mustn't physically get in the way, obstruct them, or interfere with what they're doing. Film from a reasonable distance and let them work. And there's a narrow terrorism law exception that, as the police and prosecutors themselves have confirmed, does not cover simply filming an officer on duty. So the rule to carry is simple. In public, you can film. Keep back, keep calm, keep recording. That footage has turned countless my word against theirs situations into here's exactly what happened. I've had cases where the entire outcome turned on a few seconds of a bystander's phone video, where what was said to happen and what the footage showed were two completely different stories, and the camera settled it. When it's your word, a tired memory, and a lot of stress against an official account and a notebook, the your camera is the one neutral witness. Recording is the one neutral witness in the room. That's why the instinct to reach for your phone isn't paranoia or disrespect. It's the single most useful thing you can do to protect yourself, and it is entirely lawful. And knowing where these lines actually fall, when you must answer and when you needn't, when a search is lawful and when it isn't, what to say and what to film is precisely why I did something a lot of you have been asking me to do. So many of you have written to me saying, I can never remember all of this in the moment. When my heart's going and there's an officer in front of me, put it all in one place. So I did everything I cover on this channel. The real power the police have, the exact words to say when you're stopped, questioned, searched or arrested, and how to complain or challenge it properly if they get it wrong. It's all in one plain English handbook for England and Wales called Know Your Rights. It's the Know Your Rights handbook written so you can actually use it under pressure. The kind of thing you keep on your phone for the day you need it. If you'd like it, the link's in the description below. But everything you need to take the first step is right here in this video. So let me give you the last myth because it's the one that ties all the others together. Myth 5. You must obey any order. Number 5. And this is the one that catches even the people who think they know their rights. That if a police officer tells you to do something, you have to do it or you're committing an offense. That an instruction from an officer is by itself the law. It is not. An officer's words only bind you when there's an actual legal power behind them. Move along, stand over there, unlock your phone, let me look in your bag. Every one of those is only an order you must obey if a specific power makes it one. Take that phrase people are terrified of, obstruction. Obstructing a police officer is a real offense. Yes, but it means obstructing an officer in the lawful execution of their duty. The word lawful is doing enormous work there. If the officer has no power to give the instruction, then declining it calmly is not obstruction because there was no lawful duty for you to obstruct. This is the myth that quietly underpins the other 4. People obey things they never had to obey because they assume a uniform plus an instruction equals the law. It doesn't. Uniform plus instruction plus an actual power equals the law. So the question that cuts straight to the heart of it every time, said politely and without a hint of aggression, is this. Is that a request or order? What's the power? Request or an order? And what's the power? 9 times out of 10, that single question changes the whole tone of the encounter, because it tells the officer calmly that you know the difference, and knowing the difference is the whole game. I want to be careful here, because this is the myth where people can overcorrect and get themselves into real trouble. So hear me clearly. Knowing that an instruction needs a power is not a license to argue, to square up, or to refuse everything and lecture the officer on the pavement. That's how a can situation turns into an arrest for a public order offense or genuine obstruction. The skill is the opposite of confrontation. You stay polite, you keep your hands visible, you keep your voice level, and you simply ask what the power is. If they name a real one, comply, and you take up any complaint properly afterwards in writing with advice, not in the street. The person who wins here is never the loudest. It's the one who's calm, recorded, and quietly precise. So let me pull together 5 together. And as I do, be honest with yourself about how many you'd have got wrong before today. 1. You do not have to give your name on the street, unless a specific power says so. Make them tell you the power. 2. Silence is not guilt, and you can always wait for legal advice before you answer. 3. A search needs reasonable grounds, and you're allowed to ask what they are. 4. You can film the police in public, and they can't seize your phone or make you delete it just for that. And 5. An instruction is only binding if there's a real power behind it. So it's always fair to ask what that power is. Notice the thread running through every single one. You stay calm, you stay polite, you never resist or run, and you simply ask out loud what power the officer is using. That one habit protects you more than anything else, because the law in this country was never built on you obeying out of fear. It was built on the police having a specific power and being able to point to it. Because here's the truth of it, and it's why these myths survive. The police are not going to stand there and correct your misunderstandings. It's not their job to talk you out of giving away a right. The system just runs quietly and leaves you to either know where you stand or assume the worst and hand it over. The most powerful thing you can do, the thing you're doing right now, is simply know the 5. So that the next time you're stopped or questioned or searched, you're not guessing and you're not afraid. Because you understand the rules better than most people ever will. Recap plus subscribe. If this helped you, and I hope it genuinely did, do 2 things for me. Have a look at the pinned comment in the description where I've written out the 5 myths and the exact lines so they're there when you need them. And subscribe, because every week I break down another one of these in plain English, so that the next time a myth is quietly working against you, you'll already know the truth. I'm Oliver Bennett, know the law, stay calm, and never hand over a right you didn't have to. I'll see you in the next.